Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today we are on episode 4, where we're going to talk about branching, looping, iterations, some scenarios related to it. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is branching statements. So the first branching statement that we're going to talk about is an if statement. So if statement is usually used on the scenarios in where we need to make a decision based on whether that particular statement is true or whether that particular statement is false. So that's actually is also called conditional statements or decision making statements because we decide on a particular decision and accordingly we choose a path. So as you can see, there's a condition, and if the condition is true, then we can perform certain set of actions, say typing in somewhere or clicking somewhere or any such action. And if the condition is false, so we can simply stop. So this is the start and this is the stop. So in the if decision statement or if conditional statement, there's a condition. And if that condition is met, we perform certain set of actions. So suppose if today is Thursday, I'm going to go to the gym. So that is a conditional statement, which is based on what day is today. So if it is Thursday, then I'm going to go to the gym. So that is an action that I would be performing. Moving on to the next conditional statement, which is an if-else conditional statement, wherein there is a condition. If the condition is true, we perform a certain set of action. And if the condition is false, then we perform certain different set of action. Say, for example, to relate with the previous example, if today is Thursday, then I go to the gym. But if today is not Thursday, then say I'll go to the park or I'll go for cycling. So that is an if-else block where based on the condition, if it is true, I will perform something. And if it is false, then I'll perform another set of action. And all these conditional statements are also very much linked to our daily activities. Say if we have to do an entry in the database, okay, so suppose we have to send in the mail to the users who have completed their, say, first year work anniversary. So if today is their 365 days is completed or an year they have completed with the organization, we want to actually send them a mail wishing them a good work anniversary or a happy work anniversary. And if they haven't actually completed an year, so then we will not send the message. So all these conditional statements, we kind of daily, include all these conditional statements in our day-to-day activities. So it would be very useful if we actually see them. How do we implement in StudioX so that when we put our task into action or into automation, we kind of relate that whether we want to go with an if statement or whether we want to go with an if-else statement or whether we want to go with iterative statements that we're going to see later in the episode. Now moving further, there is also a nested if-else wherein we put multiple if-else inside each other, which means we put a condition. If it is true, then we put another if-else statement. And then we see, okay, if it is true or if it is false, what do we do? Similarly, for false, we again put an if-else condition, wherein then we again have two, examples or two ways to go. So suppose if it is true, then we again check for something, and then we again see if it is true or if it is false. Similarly, for else branch, if this particular expression is false, we come here and then we check here again. Okay, let me try to, okay. So if this particular expression is true, we come here and we check some condition here, and then we can have another true and false. So if it is true, then we perform certain thing, and if it is false, then we perform certain set of actions. Similarly, over here, we check some condition. If it is true, we can perform a set of operations. If it is false, we can perform a set of operations. So this is a false branch and this is a true branch. So this is nested if else because we had two branches here wherein we checked that whether it is true or whether it is false. If it is false, then we again checked a condition. And based on that, we can again have two branches, true or false. So this is one if else, and this is another if else, and this is another if else, which is nested inside each other. So this is what nested if else is. So if the decision is a bit complex, that okay, if it is true, then we still need to see whether certain other conditions are true or false. So suppose if today is Thursday, then I again check that, okay, what time it is. It is 5 p.m., then I'll go to the gym. If it is not 5 p.m., then I'll go to the park or I'll go for cycling. So one condition is there, whether today is Thursday, and then we also have a condition, what time it is. So such statements are called nested if else. Now moving further to the looping, which is iterative statements. So what do we mean by looping, or what do we mean by iterations? Let me just erase it. So if a certain set of activity we have to perform a lot many times, then we go on with looping, which means, so first of all, StudioX provides three types of activities. One is for each Excel row, the other is for each email, and the third is for each file and folder. So if I talk about practical examples, say if I pick up for each email. So suppose you have received a lot many emails, a lot many issues has been raised, or a lot many claims has been sent to you for you to process. So you have to actually check each email one by one. Say you've received 10 emails and you have designed an automation that reads the email for you and performs certain actions on it, which means you have to read each email one by one, which means you have to 10 times read the emails, 10 different emails. So that reading thing is actually a repeating on every email. You're actually reading all the 10 emails, which means you're performing the reading thing again and again. So that is what looping on iteration is. If you have to perform certain set of statements repetitively, then you come into looping statements. Say for each Excel row, if your Excel has 10,000 rows that you have to enter into an application, so you have to read each row one by one and put it into the application, which means you're doing this task repetitively for 10,000 times. So that is what looping is. You start and you check whether this is the last item or not, which is if I'm done, if all the data has been processed, if all the emails has been read. So if all has been read and it is the last item, then you end it. But if it is not the last item, then you perform a certain set of actions, which is the repetitive action that you perform. And this is what looping is. Now, broadly, there could be different type of loop. In StudioX, we are only focusing on these three types: for each Excel row, for each email, and for each file and folder. But if we broadly talk about, then there are three different type of loops. One is for loop, wherein you perform certain set of actions n number of times. The other is while loop. So as the name suggests, you're going to perform that certain set of actions only until the while condition is true. So say we put while the number of items are 10,000. So that particular set of actions would be performed 10,000 times. The 10,001th time, it will not be performed. And similarly, we also have a do while loop. The only difference between while and do while is do while will always get executed once. Okay, and then it will check the condition. Whereas while will first check the condition and then only execute these set of statements. Whereas do while will first execute it once and then will check the statements. Mainly all these three type of loops, which is for each that we saw just here, while and do while, they perform certain set of actions that you have to perform in a repeated order. Only in such scenarios, we use looping and iterations. Last but not the least, we also have switch activity, which is used in the scenario when we have to perform different actions based on outcome. Say if today is Monday, I will go for cycling. If today is Tuesday, I would take a rest. If today is Wednesday, I'll go for gymming. If today is Thursday, then I'll do some activity, so on and so forth. So, based on what day is today, you are performing a different set of actions. So as you can see here from the diagram itself, so if it is equal to constant one can be any value. Say it could be day, it could be time, it could be the amount, anything. So if it matches, then I perform certain set of action. If it is matches to constant 2, then I'll perform certain set of actions. If it matches constant 3, then I'll perform certain set of action. One important thing to note in switch activity, if nothing matches, there has to be a default set of action. So if none of the condition matches, then my default action will get executed. Now, if you have certain default thing to perform, then you can write that code here. But if you don't want to perform anything, then you can leave it as empty, which means if today is Monday, I'm going to do this. If today is Tuesday, I'm going to do this, so on and so forth. Say till Saturday. But if Monday to Saturday, nothing matches, so then comes the Sunday. Okay, so the Sunday will come in the default code. So you can do something, which means you can write something in it, put some activities, but you can also leave it empty, which means if these three conditions are not true, then I don't want to perform anything. So based on the use case or based on the process that you're automating, you can pick up whether you want to go with the if statements, you can pick up whether you want to go with the looping and iteration statements, or whether you want to pick up the switch activity. Now let's see all of this practically, that how do we actually go on implementing it. So switching back to StudioX, here we are on the home page or start screen, I would say. So I'm going to create a blank task and name it looping and branching. I'll change its location. So the default location, it has taken default UiPath folder, but I'm going to change it and let's click on create. So we have this Excel here that has transaction types and that has certain other values. And there is a default, you can say app for you to practice, which is WI. So this is a default app for you to practice what you have learned. If you want this app, let me know. I'll drop the exe somewhere and give you the link so that you can access it. Otherwise, you can simply search for this app and you'll get the exe of it. In case if you're not able to find, let me know in the comment section below. I'll provide you with the exe. So this is a dummy app wherein you can practice and see how much you have learned. Okay, so our first thing would be, let's suppose we go on checking that if the transaction is empty, which means the eth column, if it is empty, then we're going to enter all these values over here on the app. So we have cash in, we have on us check and not on us check. And then if we accept it, we get a transaction number here. So we can paste the transaction number back here. So let's first go with the if statement. What if we want to check that if this particular thing is empty, then just enter these values onto the app. Okay, so that is the first basic thing. For that, what we're going to do is first we're going to use Excel file, which actually has all these values. I'm going to use Excel file. I'll select my file, which lies here, decisions. So I'll select this file. I'll reference it as decision so that it is easy for me to locate it. And over here, I'm going to add a if statement. So once I add a if statement, I have this arrow button. Using this, I can actually put a condition. So first it says select a value. So I'll select a value. I'll indicate it in Excel. I'll select this. Okay, and I'll click on confirm. Okay. Now I'll go to condition builder. I have selected a value, but I also want to build a condition. So I want to build a condition that if this thing is empty, I also have other conditions. If I want to check less than equal to, not equal to, if it is true, if it is false, if it starts with something, if it ends with something, so I can even do that. But as of now, I'm going to check if it's empty or not. Okay, so if it is empty, then what would I do? I would enter the values onto that application. So first of all, I'm going to use application or browser to tell my StudioX that which application actually I'm using. So I'll indicate my application first of all, and then I can have type into, because I want to type in the value. Okay. So I'm going to type into, where do I want to type it? I want to type it here in cache in. So I'll click on cache in. I'll confirm it. Okay. What value do I want to type? So I want to type the cache in value, which is this. I'll confirm it. Okay. Similarly, let me also type in cache in and cache out. So as of now, I'm going to type only two values to make this a bit more quick. So I'm going to type on as check and confirm. And now let me drag in a click activity so that I can submit the value that I've typed in. So I'm going to go with a click activity and I'm going to click on accept. So I'll say accept. Yeah, that's it. So I've done it. Okay. Now let's give this thing a run to see what it actually does. So the first value that we have, E2, which is the first line that we have in there, it actually has the transaction is empty. So it should probably type. Okay, so I'm going to click on run. So let's see. So we have 133 as cash in and 20 as cash out. Okay, so for honest check also it typed the same thing. It's because I think we did not indicate properly. So let's indicate. So it's honest check, confirm. And let's again give it a run. So it should type 133 and then honest check as 20 and click on accept. Yeah. So it did what it had to. So it checked for a condition and then typed something. Okay. So now this is if statement. What if we want to go with an if else statement? Say, if this particular thing, if this condition does not satisfy, which means if this thing is not empty. Okay. So then what do we want to do? Say when if it is not empty, we want to display a message to the user saying that transaction field is not empty. Okay. So we can also show that what actually the transaction field is. So we'll show whatever the transaction field is, and let us open it in text format. Okay. And we would say transaction number is not empty. Its value is this. So we typed in the value. I mean, we took the value from the Excel itself. Okay. And what we can do over here is when we click on accept, we also have an option to actually get the transaction value. So we will use get text activity to actually get that value. So let's indicate it on screen where the transaction value is, which is here. Let's confirm it. So we got the value. Let's save that value for later use in a variable. So we'll say transaction number. So we have the value in this variable. Now we can also write this value back to the Excel. Okay. So we should have an activity named write cell or something so that we can write it back. So we have write cell. Okay. So what to write? We already know we have saved the value. It's transaction number. And where do we want to write it? So let's indicate it in Excel. Where do we want to write it? So we want to write it here. So let's confirm. Okay. So first time when we're going to give this a run, so as of now, we know that the value is empty. Okay. So let's run it. So the first time value is empty. It's going to enter 133 and 20, accept it, get the transaction number, and it would write it back here. Okay. So we have the value here. The next time when we're going to run it, where it says, so here is our if statement where we're checking that whether the value is empty or not. So now the value is not empty because it's a consecutive run. So let's give it a run this time. And since the value is not empty, we would have a message box on screen saying transaction number is not empty. Its value is 365347. Similarly, if it is empty, we are performing this set of operation. If it is not empty, we are performing this set of action. We can also have another if inside it. And here again, we can have if statement and else statement. Okay, so this actually becomes your nested loop, wherein you have one if, inside that you again have one if, and then inside this you can again have one if. So all this branching statement, one inside another, is actually nesting, which is it's nested one inside another, right? Like that. So this is nested if else statement. When the decision making becomes very complex and a lot of parameters are involved, in such scenarios, we use nested if. Okay. Moving on, as we saw that we performed the set of operations only on first line item, right? What if we want to perform it on all line items, which is we want to perform the same set of operation on 13, 14 lines, okay? Which means we have to perform repeated set of actions, and there is where we use for each row. So we're gonna put a for each row here, which is for each Excel row. In range, so we'll indicate the range as well. We have a table here, okay? So let's indicate the range as well. So if you see, this table name is decisions. So we created a table and we named it decisions. You can read it from the design tab, under the design tab. So we'll have to select the range. So let's select the range. So we see, okay, sheet, and we say, okay, decisions table. We know that it has headers. Okay. And now what we can do is we can drag in this if inside this for each. Okay. Now, what if we give it a run? Okay. So let's give it a run. What it would do, it would pick up the first row and say, okay, the number is not empty. Okay. And it will keep on saying the same thing again and again. Why is it happening? Any idea? So this is happening that because though we have put it inside the loop, okay, so it's gonna run the number of times the rows are there. So I think we have 12, 13 rows. So it's gonna run the same thing 12, 13 times, but not changing the value. And why is it not changing the value? It's because we have hard-coded the value as E2. So it's always gonna pick up the first row. But we'll have to indicate that you don't have to pick up the first row every time. So what we'll do is we'll say current row and pick up the transaction number. Okay. Then we'll go to the condition builder and we'll say if it is empty and save. Similarly, let's change the value everywhere where we are typing in. Okay. So instead of B2, which is actually this thing, this particular cell, we have to keep changing it. It has to be B2, then it will be B3, then B4, B5. So it's incrementing, right? So we have to make sure that we're doing the same here. So we're going to clear the value and we'll say current row. And what is the value? We have to type in the cache in. Okay. Similarly, let's do for honest check. So we'll clear the value. Let's clear the value. And let's say current row and we'll tell honest check. Okay. Except would remain the same because that's a click. Get text would remain the same. Right cell may change. So let's see. So we'll say what to write, that is okay, but where to write is what we have to change. So where do we want to write it? Current row and transaction number. This is where we want to write. Okay, let's click on auto increment row. Okay, and if it has the value, then we want to say open text. We want to remove this. So its value is current row transaction number. This is what we want to display. Okay. Now let's give this thing a run. We'll open the Excel. We'll give this thing a run and let's see. So first row is not empty. So it has shown that, okay, the value is this. Now the second row is empty. It has 31 and 45. So it has typed in the transaction number. So it's gonna one by one enter in the values, get the transaction number from there and copy it to the Excel. So as you can see, it's gonna do the same thing for all the records. So I'm gonna stop it in between. Okay. So I think we've seen it. So let me just stop it. Okay. And if I again give this thing a run, okay. I'm not able to. Okay, let it finish, because every time I go and try to stop it, it actually takes back the control. Okay, so it's done. It has typed in. Okay, so now that it has already typed in everything, okay, so you can see it picked up one Excel row and entered the value onto the application and got the transaction number back here. Okay. And it completed all of this in 57 seconds. We can make it faster as well. So this is how you kind of iterate over each row and get it done. So as of now, it was 13 rows, so it was easy. But suppose if you had to perform the same thing for 13,000 rows, then it would actually be a very hectic and very, tiring task. And it is better that you put a robot in action instead of you doing that monotonous task. So this is looping. We have seen for each Excel row. I know we have to cover for each file and folder and for each email as well. We're going to cover it in upcoming episodes. But let us also see how do we implement the switch activity. Okay. So let me just comment this. Okay. And let's have a switch activity in here. Okay. So it's an expression that takes a certain value. Okay. So we can also take a input value from the user as well. Okay. So we can have an input dialog, or I think we also have an ask when run. I think that's an input dialog only. So we have input dialog. Okay. So we can put in, say, enter the day. So we'll decide based on what day the user has entered. Today is Tuesday, today is Thursday. There could be some scenario in your day-to-day office activity that if today is Tuesday, you have to check certain applications that whether tickets has been logged or not, or if today is say Friday, so you have to send certain reminders to certain stakeholders because it's the end of the week. And similarly, if today is Monday, you have to perform certain other priority tasks. So similarly, you can design a robot to do such tasks for you. So it's a text box. We're going to take the value and then we'll save it as today's day. And let's click on OK. So the expression would have saved value, which is today day. And we'll add cases. Okay. So we'll say, okay, if today is Sunday, okay, so we can have any set of activity. Okay. So say, suppose if today is Sunday, use an Excel file. You can pick up that same Excel file. So we'll pick up decisions Excel file. Okay. Or either we can just copy up what we did above. Okay. So let's just copy it instead of writing the entire thing again. So we'll copy it here and let's enable it. And let's do this thing that let's delete 2 of these things, okay, so that it becomes pretty easy for us to do. Or let's do this thing that we can also do, that deposit, withdraw, or something like this, that based on transaction type, we actually select here that whether we want to deposit, withdraw, we want to do split deposit. We can even perform something like that, or we can leave it as it is. What we're going to do, if today is Sunday, then we're going to go through this Excel file and we are going to perform the same steps, that it will open that application, enter the value. The only thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the number of line items just to make it shorter. So it's going to only run on 2 line items. So if today is Sunday, it's going to do this. Now I say, okay, if today is Monday, so I want to display something using a message box. So I'll select a message box. I'll go to the text editor and I'll say, okay, today is. Now either I can type in or I can actually use the saved value, what is today's day. So it would display the same day that I have actually provided. Then similarly, I can have a lot many cases for each day of the week. And there comes a default case. So if any of this is not true, which means if today is not Sunday and today is not Monday, okay. So say then I want to write in the Excel. So where do I want to write? I want to write it. I have to use an Excel application scope, of course. So let me use an Excel application scope. I'm going to use this file. Where is the file that I want to use? So decisions file, okay. And then I'm going to use a write cell activity, maybe, yeah. Okay, so what do I want to write? So I'm going to write that this is the default case. And today is, so whatever input the user has provided, so I'm going to use the saved value, which is today day, save. Where do I want to write it? So I'll go to Excel. I'll indicate in Excel. Say I want to write here, okay. So I'm going to confirm. Okay, yeah. So let me save it and let me run it, okay. So for the first time, I'm going to provide, say, Sunday. Okay, so I will say Sunday, wherein it's going to open the application and enter those 2 values, because I've only provided 2 sheets in the Excel. Okay, so if we open the Excel, it has written the value. Okay, the other thing what I'm going to do is this time when I'll run, I'll not provide Sunday and Monday, and I can provide any XYZ input, which does not satisfy the given condition. So there are 3 conditions. We have Sunday, Monday, and we have a default case. Okay, so if it is not following in this case or this case, it's going to fall in the default case. So I've provided any absurd input and I'll click on OK. So what it has done is that if I open this Excel and go here, so it has entered that this is the default case. Today is the absurd value that I provided. So this is the use of switch activity, wherein if based on certain input or based on the value of input, you have to take different set of actions. You choose switch activity over the looping statements or over the if else statement. Whereas if you have to perform the same set of actions n number of times, you go with looping statements. And if you have decision making thing that if this happens, do this, if this does not happen, do this, then you go with a branching statement like if else. So that's all for this video. I hope I was able to clear a few of the concepts around looping and branching, and you would get to see a lot more in the upcoming episodes. Till then, stay tuned and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.